Good morning. This morning's presentation would be on the warrant requirement. It's only an introduction to the warrant requirement. Basically, what we're going to cover is the basic requirements for the warrant, why we need a warrant, when we need a warrant, and also two cases that establish a two-pronged test, Aguilar versus the state of Texas, and then Spinelli versus United States. That's established a two-pronged test when we're dealing with an unrevealed informant and information from an unrevealed informant. And so in order to do this presentation, I want to use a PowerPoint presentation. So if you bear with me for 1 second, I'm going to share this PowerPoint presentation with you. The warrant requirement. Basically, we know that the primary requirement of the Fourth Amendment is that there must be a warrant. The warrant requirement is the premier requirement, the first requirement that we look to if there's a warrant. And the warrant requirement says, no warrant shall issue but upon probable cause supported by oath or affidavit affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. Now, if you look at that, it's presumptively, if we're going to presumptively, or the courts have said that it's presumptively unreasonable, or search or seizure done without a warrant is presumptively unreasonable unless it is, or it meets one of the well-delineated exceptions to the warrant requirements. And that comes from Johnson versus United States, that if we have a warrant requirement, it's going to we first look to whether there was a warrant. And then if there's no warrant, or if the warrant was faulty, then it's going to be presumed that the search or seizure is void, or that it's in violation of the Fourth Amendment, unless it meets a well-delineated exception of a warrant requirement. And those exceptions will be covered later. Now, the requirements for the warrant, if you go back and we look at them, first, there must be an affiant. That is someone who's going to apply for make an application for the warrant, who will apply for the warrant. And this affiant must swear or affirm that the information included in the warrant or included in his application is true. He must affirm that to a neutral and detached magistrate. The purpose of this is that we don't want the affiant, we don't want the government, we don't want police officers going in and doing a backdoor approach to probable cause. That is, we want to make certain that before the warrant is issued, before there's a defining of probable cause, that there are enough facts that are given for the purposes of the magistrate, a neutral and detached magistrate, to make a determination. Is enough of probable cause? Does it show that there is criminal activity? Probable cause deals with criminal activity. That is, the information must show that there's a probability that criminal activity is occurring, is about to occur, or that evidence of crime will be found. And so the affiant must give enough facts to the neutral and detached magistrate in order for him to make that determination. It cannot be based on suspicions. It cannot be based upon a mere hunch. Further, it must be probable cause. The affiant must be able to reach the threshold that probable cause exists. And we're going to look at the definition of probable cause in the next slide. The warrant must state, or it must be specific. It must have particularity. That is, what is the particular place to be searched? What's the particular thing to be seized? The person to be seized, or the person to be searched? And finally, and it's not included in the Fourth Amendment, but the courts have accepted this as a requirement for a valid warrant, that it must be issued by a neutral and detached magistrate. We do not want the officers who are in the field, who have a vested interest, who are engaged in the competitive enterprise of ferreting out crimes, determining whether there's probable cause. We want that determined by someone who's going to look forward and look after the rights of the individual, to determine whether the individual rights are being abridged under the Fourth Amendment, whether there's truly probable cause, whether there's truly enough facts to suggest criminal activity. Now, probable cause defined. Probable cause is that quantum of facts and circumstances that will suggest to a reasonable person that there is criminal activity, or that evidence of crime will be found. And that information and that suggestion is going to be given by the officer, information of the officer, and knowledge that the officer has at the time uh, that he requests the warrant. At the time that an officer requests the warrant, there must be enough information in order to make a determination that there is criminal activity, that criminal activity has occurred, is about to occur, or that evidence of crime will be found on the person or place of the search or the seizure. And it's something more than a mere hunch. It is something more than a mere hunch. However, it is less than proof beyond a reasonable doubt. It is based on probabilities, that there's a probability, and the judge and magistrate has to weigh those facts that are given to him by that officer, by that governmental official. Is there a probability, a high probability that we will find criminal activity here? Again, you must remember that probable cause is based on the suggestion of criminal activity. It must require specific facts and not just conclusory assertions. Now, the basis for probable cause. If we look at how probable cause can be found, first of all, we've said a mere hunch is not enough. Bald, unilluminated assertions given by the affiant, bald, unilluminated assertions of a police officer are entitled to no weight in reference to the probable cause determination. No weight is given to it by the court. He has to have more than bald and unilluminated assertions. There must be facts. There must be facts that he's observed. There must be facts that he's going to swear to in his application for the warrant, that these facts are true. Now, what facts are going to be enough for probable cause? What facts are going to be enough for probable cause determination? That it is a quantum of enough facts to suggest to that magistrate, a reasonable person, that there is criminal activity, to suggest that the officer's knowledge, that the officer's experience will infer that there is probable cause. First of all, an officer observations. Officer himself observes a misdemeanor, someone runs a red light, a felony, someone actually attacks someone. He observes it himself, or as an observation of another officer is going to be presumed that by the court, that there is probable cause. It's presumed that there's probable cause. Direct information from a known revealed informant. We have a known informant who's going to take the stand. He's going to be revealed at court. He will be subject to cross-examination. It's going to be presumed that his information is reliable because he's subject to perjury. He can be cross-examined, and therefore the court will presume that the information that they receive, and when we say that we have information from a known informant who will be revealed at court, that his information is credible. Hearsay information from witnesses of crime, from victims of a crime, is presumptively credible. However, when we get hearsay information from unrevealed sources, this is where the problem comes. When there's hearsay information from unrevealed sources that are not subject to perjury, that are not subject to cross-examination, it is not going to be presumed that their information is credible. It's going to be up on the person who's requesting a warrant to prove or to offer facts to suggest that the credibility, or to support the information's credibility. When we look at that, and again, this is where the problem comes, when we have hearsay information from an unknown informant. And when I said unknown informant, an informant who is not going to be revealed at court. This is where it comes in. Now, there were two cases in particular that I want to discuss that really dealt with this particular concept, that really dealt with this issue. And the first was Aguilar versus the state of Texas. Aguilar versus the state of Texas says, basically, when we are dealing with an unknown informant, an unrevealed informant, that we must test two things. We must test, number one, his credibility, and number two, the reliability of his information. Is he a credible informant? Is he credible? Is there enough facts in the affidavit or the application for the warrant to say that this informant is credible? Because we're not revealing him. he's not going to be on, he's not going to take the stand at trial to talk about what he actually saw. So how do we make the determination? What do we need? First, is he credible? How do we make the determination to see if he's credible? Have we used him before? What has been his track record? Does he stand to gain anything from this? And those things are going to be important. What is his track record? How many times have they been used? How many times was he right? Does he stand to gain something this time that may suggest that he's not being truthful? The credibility, the reliability of the informant himself. But not only that, the reliability or the credibility of his information. There must be underlying circumstances that suggest that the information that he's given to the officer that's going to be used to make determination of probable cause is within itself reliable, is within itself credible. Look at the second bullet point here. To determine probable cause when the information submitted for a warrant was obtained from an unrevealed informant, Aguilar created a two-pronged test. Sufficient underlying circumstances to demonstrate how the informant received his conclusion, or reached his conclusion, I should say. Why his information is credible. He was there. He participated. Information credible. Why? He's implicated himself. He's incriminated himself. Why is his information credible? Because he gives enough information that shows that he has an insight, that he has inside information, that he knows what's going on. And again, not only is the information credible, not only is the information reliable, but the credibility of the informant is the second prong of the test. Aguilar established that test, that if we are going to have an unrevealed informant testify, or if probable cause, based upon an unrevealed informant, then he must meet this two-prong test. Spinelli versus United States modified the Aguilar two-prong test, or it boasted the Aguilar two-prong test. Two-prong test. It said that, look, sometimes it may be difficult for us really, our information may not really show the reliability of the information that we're receiving from our informant. We've used this informant before. He's been, 90% of the time, he's been right. He is not receiving anything at this particular point. But we don't want to reveal him because we want to use him again. But we must show, but they still must show, according to Aguilar, the credibility of his information. Now, how do you show that? How do you show that? If this information is so scanty until we cannot necessarily verify that the information is credible. And thus, there's going to be enough for probable cause under the Aguilar test. What Spinelli said? Spinelli said that if there's substantial corroboration of verifying details and verifying the details of the information that was given by the informant, then there would be enough for probable cause and the issuance of a warrant if the other prong of the test is also met. That is, the informant is credible. So it says that, look, what has to happen if there's scanty details that are given by the informant and the officer wants to get a search warrant based upon those details, that the officer must corroborate. They must go out and must corroborate the details that is given by the informant. And the corroboration of those details must be enough to suggest to the neutral and attached magistrate that there is probable cause for the issuance of a warrant. Look at what it says. I like what it says. And I'm going to skip down to the middle of this slide right here. In the absence of a statement detailing the manner in which the information was gathered, statement was no details, scanty details. It is especially important that the tip describe the accused criminal's activity in sufficient detail that the magistrate may know that he is relying on something more substantial than a casual rumor circulating in the underworld or an accusation based merely on an individual's general reputation. The detail provided by the informant in Draper versus United States provides a suitable benchmark. He must support if the magistrate is going to give information on is going to give a warrant based on information from an unrevealed informant, and that information in reference to how he received his information and whether that information that he's passing on to the officer is credible. If it's scanty, then it must be corroborated. It must be corroborated. It must be something more. He must show something more than he is out for the purposes, or that there's merely a rumor about the suspect's general reputation out there. And that's what we're relying on, just rumor of the suspect's general reputation, that we're relying just upon speculation and not necessarily facts. We must be relying upon facts if there's going to be a warrant issued. Again, warrant is issued upon facts that are within the knowledge of the officer at the time that he requests a warrant. And here, we must find that there are facts. And those facts, because of the scanty details, must be verified, must be corroborated. And what are those facts? What are those facts, the benchmark that was set in Draper? Look at it. Draper dealt with a person that they were interested in, and whether and that person was accused of being involved in narcotics. And he was transporting narcotics between cities and interstate. And Draper gave information, or I'm sorry, not Draper, but the informant gave information that Draper was going to be traveling on 2 or 3 mornings from Chicago to Denver, and he's going to be carrying some drugs with him. Is that enough to suggest criminal activity? Remember, probable cause is based upon the suggestion of criminal activity. Probable cause is based upon the suggestion of criminal activity. That must be enough that a magistrate can make a determination that there's criminal activity, Is that enough? It's not enough, right? However, what the informant did, the informant not only told them that he's going to be going on 2 or 3 days, the informant also gave, the court said, minute particularities, minute details about Draper himself. He told about the clothes that Draper would be wearing. He told what time Draper would be arriving. He told where Draper was going. Not only that, he told how Draper walked, the gait, Draper's gait. And the court said that's enough. That's enough in order to say that his information is reliable, in order to say that he has gained this information in a reliable way. And therefore, we can say that there is criminal activity, and therefore a warrant, there is probable cause for a warrant. Look at what it says. A magistrate, when confronted with such details, could reasonably infer that the informant had gained this information in a reliable way. But if you look at Draper, it talked about his itinerary. It gave information in reference to the suspect with particular minute details, and therefore is substantial corroboration. Savinelli added to Aguilar that the reliability of informant's information could be supported. The reliability of the informant's information, that prong of the test, could be supported by officers' substantial corroboration of the verifying details given by the informant. Scanty at first, but he gave minute details, and they were able to corroborate, verify these details, and therefore enough for probable cause. Now we're going to look at another case that really kind of changes things in reference to probable cause, and how do we deal with probable cause when there is an unrevealed informant. It's going to be Gates versus Illinois, which will be the next case that we look at. I want to suggest to you that Gates versus Illinois, as many will say, that Gates versus Illinois overruled the Aguilar-Spinelli test. I believe that what Gates versus Illinois does, it refines how we use the Aguilar-Spinelli test. It did not throw the Aguilar-Spinelli test out of the window. It minimized it and redefine how we use it. And so we will start there with Gates versus Illinois on our next meeting. Thank you so very much.